Hello, dear student. This is another lesson in a series of TV lessons, fourth forms. We are going now in this lesson to show a new lesson. And this is, as you see in the pictures here, some of the pictures here of some of the text, some of the books. And what we are going to focus on today is how to read the back cover of the book. Of course, we cannot talk about reading the back cover of a book without talking about reading the front cover of a book. And this is very important when we are going either to buy or to read the book we are interested in. So here we have, for example, one of the books that I have just chosen. This book, as you see from its front cover, the title of it is Understanding Modern China Through Its Language and Culture. And when we look at the pictures, the writer of this book, we see those pictures explain some of what we are going to find in this book. So from the pictures we understand that this book is giving us a brief idea about the culture and civilization of China, from modern to the traditional, you know. For example, you notice here, this is somehow modern China. This is also the high buildings, etc. And this is, we see here, for example, it is somehow some of the traditional architecture in China. This is also here, you see these kind of buildings. Now, this following here, it's not visible to you, I'm sorry, but it's just here a small book. The back cover of the same book, Understanding China or Modern China and Culture, etc. And from this one, it's not visible to you, but we notice that there are different parts in this back cover of the book. We have a first one, a brief view or opinion about the writer, a Chinese writer, Zhang Zhuang, and then some of the other parts of the text, which are normally some parts of the critics and some other parts about written by other authors talking about this writer and about this book. We also have another picture at the back cover of the book, which is not usually very frequent. This is another front cover of a book. And this is the book we are going to deal about reading, how to read the back cover of the same book. As you see the picture, I mean the front cover, we have, first of all, some of the logo of, this is the Penguin edition, and everybody knows that kind of edition, which has published hundreds, if not millions of books. And we see from the first part, you have the title of we have the name of the writer, Sherwood Anderson, and then we have the title of the book, which is Winesburg, Ohio, and then we have a picture. Sometimes we might ask questions about what is the importance of the picture in the front cover of the book. And when we look carefully and try to study, somehow it's a picture, it's not a painting. It could be read as a painting. As we read a painting, we read the colors, we read the different forms and design of it. And we notice from this, imagine that you are going to buy a book and you are in a bookshop, you have hundreds of books, and you are going to choose a book that you might be interested in or that you might read. As you see, how can we comment upon, for example, the different things that we have here? See here, this is a little house, far away, no other houses around it. We see a tree, and behind we see a field, maybe of cereals, or I don't know, it could be so. And then we have in front of the house, as you see, this one is a windmill, which was used to get water out from deep in the ground. This kind of reading those different images or those different parts of the whole picture give us an idea about the time when the book was written. Of course, when you talk about windmills, we no longer use windmills nowadays. have running water in taps at home, and therefore this gives us an idea about the past. So this is one thing. The second thing, we might talk about the different combinations of colors, and you see here the yellow, the green, and the white, etc. So far, it's not a color that is polluted. I mean, a place that is polluted, maybe the countryside. This house is alone, and putting one house alone in a picture, we can focus on this kind of oneness. I mean, there is only one thing. It's a house without other houses, no neighbors, so it's not the town. This house is alone. Maybe it has, or it evokes what the writer wants to talk about in his novel, talking maybe about loneliness, about solitude. We might understand this later when we complete our opinion or our view about this book, when we look at the back cover of the book. This is just a picture of the scan of this back cover. We have scanned it for you, but this is the text that we are going to read together. And now, before we read the text, we'd like to have this paragraph. We read it together and understand the importance of understanding and reading the back cover and the front cover of a book. What does this paragraph say? The front and back covers and title of a book play an important role in buying and reading the book you are interested in. Which means good design is what guides buyers as they select the products they purchase. By studying the title, the graphics, and the color combinations, photos, line drawings, paintings, and other artwork, you can create an approximately clear idea which will help you buy and read the book. If you notice and focus on these words that are written in red, the title, we have seen sometimes the title is important. If I go back to the title of the text, which is Winesburg, Ohio, that's the title, Winesburg, Ohio. As we all know, Ohio is one of the states of America, and then you have Winesburg, Ohio. This means that we are going to talk about a place in Ohio, and therefore that is the importance of a title. It might help us to locate or understand where the text is written, or where or what the writer is talking about. The graphics that we have here, as we have mentioned sometimes, the lines, can give us an idea. The lines are going up vertically, or are going downward, or going horizontally, and those kinds of graphics, for those who understand arts, and many of you are studying fine arts at school, you know the importance of these lines. Now the color combinations. Sometimes the colors can give us an idea. When you talk about, for example, a picture or an image with gray color, and gray means somehow sadness, or when you find a dark picture, maybe something which is not, it is vague, something which is not clear, something which is unhappy, something which is sad, etc. The same thing as when you talk about photos, and of course sometimes you find a photo, not a picture, a photo of a person, either the person who is writing the book himself, the author, I mean, the writer, the novelist in case of a novel, the poet in case of poetry, and sometimes you find the picture or the photo of the person who writes his biography, I mean autobiography, or sometimes the biography that is written by somebody else. We sometimes put the photo of the person we are writing about. And the same thing for line drawings, paintings. Sometimes you have a painting. You are talking about, for example, Picasso, or talking about any other painter. You might, in the front cover of a book, you put a painting of the artist you are writing about. Then other artwork, of course. Now, all of these help you and me and all the people who want to read. By the way, you should read. As you know, The more you read, the more you know. That is the importance of focusing on what we call reading the back cover of a book, so that we do not buy a book and we put it in the bookcase, as many people of you, and sometimes me, do. We buy books and we just put them. Books are not used for decoration. Just please read them. Here is then what we are going to begin with, the first part of what is written in the back cover of this book. Let's read the text together. Winesburg, Ohio, written when Sherwood Anderson was 40, was the book in which he achieved the freshness and rightness of an author who, for the first time, is touching his highest mark. Through the years, it has come to be regarded as the best of his work, as the best of his works. A unified collection of short stories. It lays bare the life of a small town in the American Midwest. The central character is George Willard, a young reporter on the Winesburg Eagle. One by one, the inhabitants confide in him their hopes, their dreams, their fears. The town of friendly but solitary people comes to life, and Anderson's peculiar talent exposes the emotional undercurrents that bind this community of desperate individuals together. This part, the last part that is written in the same novel we are talking about, is not really talking about the novel. It's rather part that is written by one person, who is Malcolm Cowley, and this person is a critic. And this is what we are going to write, this piece of critic written by Malcolm about Sherwood Anderson, the writer of this novel. And of course here you see the novel here. Sorry for the novel, it's a bit old because I read it long ago. Now, Malcolm Cowley's penetrating introduction is a reappraisal of, you notice here the quotation marks, you see, the quotation marks. This is a quote. The only storyteller of his generation who left a mark on the style and vision of the generation that followed. So when you have sometimes authors or philosophers or artists can have an impact not only on the readers, the people, but they can also have an impact on their followers. I mean, their disciples sometimes, either authors or, novelists, poets, or storytellers, etc. Now, left a mark on the style and vision of the generation that followed. That followed who? That followed Sherwood Anderson, the novelist of this book, of this novel. Hemingway. Many of you might have heard of Hemingway. He's a famous American writer who wrote about lots of things about war and peace, and one of his books, Preaching Peace, for example, For Whom the Bell Rings, talking about war in Spain. And he has different books. Faulkner, another writer or philosopher, he's rather a thinker. One of his books talking about the deep feelings of people who are not really, they do not find themselves, those people who feel a bit isolated or rejected. They don't belong to society. And Faulkner has a famous book that is called The Outsider. And you know here, the outsider, out of the side, it means is not part in the group, it means in society. Wolf, Steinbeck, another writer who had one of the most important books or novels of him is The Grapes of Wrath. You know, grapes are fruit that you eat, but when you press a grape, you are going to have a liquid, which is that juice of the grapes. But Steinbeck, in this novel, in his novel, he talked about the misery and the social problems of the American people who sold their lands, for example, in the East and in the great plains of America, going to the West, looking for gold during the period of the gold rush, and he depicts this kind of life when the crisis, or what you call the Great Depression in the 1930s, took place. Sorian and Harry Miller, each of these thinkers and writers, owes an unmistakable debt to Sherwood Anderson, the novelist that we are talking about. Now, here, if you look carefully, we have a table, and these things are going to help us when we read the back cover of a book. What must we focus on to understand or to make a decision whether to buy the book or not, whether to read the book or not? Sometimes you might have books in your bookcase, but you don't know what they contain. Now, in here we have the setting, and in the setting we talk about place and time. Then we have the characters. Then we have the main character. Although characters, the main character is one of the group, but we try here to focus on the main character, the hero or the heroine. And then the literary genre that you are going to talk about, whether it is a fictive story, whether it is realistic, whether it is a science fiction, and different. So whether it is a biography or an autobiography. I mean, from this beginning, from reading or concentrating on the back cover of a book, when you understand the literary genre, you make your decision. And then the theme, the topic. What is the writer talking about? Of course, sometimes you are not interested in one of the issues or one of the topics, so you decide and say, this does not interest me. Of course, there are some books books written by a specialist about birds or about reptiles or about insects or about medicine, about diseases, about different flails, about hope, about love, about so. You might take the theme you are interested in. Let's now focus back on the table that we have. The place, the setting, and the place. This is it. Winesburg, Ohio, the American Midwest. From the place, we understand Winesburg. You see here, Winesburg, comma, Ohio. Winesburg, comma, Ohio. Ohio is the state. And here we say Winesburg. It is a region, a town, a small village or a town which belongs to the state of Ohio. Ohio, the American Midwest. As we take another example, for example, we say Sfax, Tunisia. We say Nablus, Tunisia. We say Hammamet, comma, Nablus. So we take here the smaller and then the larger part of it. When was this book written? It's not, sometimes you do not have the exact date in the back cover of the book, but when you focus carefully on the names mentioned in the back cover of the book, when this book talks about those people that we have mentioned as Steinbeck, as Faulkner, as those different writers. By the way, Sherwood Anderson was born in 1876 and died in 1941. This information does not exist in the back cover of the book. It does not exist in the front page of a book. Sometimes you might read, for example, the date of edition, but the date of edition, we can now publish any book written by writers who died long ago. Until now, sometimes we publish and republish books of Ibn Rushd or of Tahsin or Molière or any other writers. So the date of edition sometimes does not give you the exact time that you need. Now, after reading the time, we focus on those writers. Steinbeck, we know that Steinbeck, for example, wrote about the Great Depression, and the Great Depression is the 1930s, you know, the great crisis that everybody knows, 1929. You study this in geography or in history, and you talk about this kind of Great Depression. It's an economic crisis about which Steinbeck wrote. And as we know that Steinbeck is one of the followers who was influenced by Sherwood Anderson, we try to set the time So let's say here, it's the early years of the 20th century. It's not exactly we do not have the exact date, but we understand somehow that we are talking about the first half of the last century. The characters, the inhabitants of Winesburg. Imagine a writer is focusing the main characters of his novel, of his stories or his tale, the inhabitants of Winesburg. All the inhabitants are characters in the novel. From this, we understand that the writer belongs to his community, and he talks about all these members who live with him, those members who walk beside him when he goes to work or when in cafes or in any other place. And then the main character, we have simply the name George Willard. Of course, it does not give us a great idea, an important idea, if you know the name, but at least you have an idea. Now, the literary genre, Winesburg, Ohio, we notice here it is a collection of short stories. And all of these pieces of information exist in the back cover of the book. When it is a collection of short stories, you might decide, well, it's not a novel that might be long, and I might not have time to read all the novel. When it is short stories, I might focus on one or two. If it pleases me, I go on. If not, I choose another story. Now, the theme, this is the last part of this table, depicting the people relationships in a small town. As here, this kind of depicting the people relationships or the relationships between the people of in a small town. This small town is what we have mentioned in the setting. It is Winesburg. It is in Ohio. It is in the American Midwest. It is in the USA. So from the small town, you go from the specific to the general. This, therefore, depicting the relations between people. Therefore, we understand that the writer is talking about things that are real. Let's move. And we have this little question. Which detail shows the writer depicts real life? Now, of course, here, this question, when we look at it, it helps us understand, get that this book is talking about real life. It's not talking about a story that is totally fictive or a tale or a legend or a myth or a biography, although biography or an autobiography, it is not only depicting but telling the events in a chronological order. Which detail, of course, in the back cover of the book, shows the writer depicts real life? This is the answer. He says it lays bare the life of a small town in the American Midwest. You know, the adjective bare, you might say, have the adjective, the compound adjective, you say, I am barefooted. Barefooted, it means without shoes. I am bareheaded. It means my head is not covered. And we say this room is bare. It means it's empty. There is nothing in it. And therefore, it lays bare the life of a small, it unveils every vague thing or things that cover the deep feelings or the undercurrents between people. Sometimes there are emotions and they are exchanged between the people of a small village, but they are not explicit, they are implicit in the relations between people, especially when you talk about a certain period in the life. Donc, this is the sentence. It lays bare the life of a small town in the American Midwest, as it is mentioned in the back cover of this book, Winesburg, Ohio. Now, the following question is, pick out the sentence showing that the inhabitants of Winesburg trust the main character. They trust him. It means they feel confidence in him. They have confidence in this person. So he might be a symbol who represents those people of Winesburg, or he might be also someone who holds their sadness, their feelings, their joy, their happiness, etc. Notice here the sentence. By the way, we might talk a little bit about tests that you might have in the baccalaureate exam. When they ask you pick out, you say you pick a flower, a nice flower that you give to your mom. Pick out the sentence showing that the inhabitants of Winesburg trust. When you are going to answer in the baccalaureate exam or even in your tests, if they ask you to pick out, you are going to take a sentence from the text and then you are going to write it. Pay attention here. Do not write extra details which sometimes may have a conflict or might lead you to having a wrong part in the sentence which does not answer the question. Therefore, as you know, somehow in mathematics, if you have minus and then plus, you are going to result in negative. It means minus. The answer to this sentence, of course, is this: the inhabitants confined in him their hopes and their dreams. They confined. The word confined, confide, it means they have something. As I confined, for example, a book or something I have with you. You're going to keep it from me, or you are going to talk about it, to tell the other people about what I feel, what I hope, and what I dream. Those hopes and those dreams, how to make them come true. Sometimes when we as individuals cannot really make our dreams come true alone, we sometimes feel that there is one person who might represent us to put those dreams into reality. Now, this is the text. I mean, we come back here to the back cover of the same book, Winesburg, Ohio, to have the answer as it is here written in red. You notice the inhabitants confined in him their hopes, their dreams, and of course their fears. Now, this part, which is written in the back cover of the same book, Winesburg, Ohio, as we said, it is a critic written by Malcolm Macaulay, and this person who is talking about Malcolm Cowley's penetrating introduction is reappraisal of the only storyteller of his generation who left a mark on the style and vision of the generation that followed. This part, or this reading critics about novels that you are going to buy or read, sometimes they help you when you find a detail like that this storyteller, you know, a storyteller, he is a novelist, but as we know, our book is a collection of short stories. So he's a real good storyteller who left a mark, an impact, an influence on the style and vision of the other writers, the generation of thinkers and writers. And we have mentioned them before, those people here that help us to read and understand whether we make a decision to read the book or not. So if we notice from the beginning until now, we have dealt with the front cover, the back cover of a book. Of course, don't forget that sometimes in the back cover of the book, you do not have only the text. Sometimes at the bottom of the page, you find the price. Sometimes you find the time of the edition. It means the year when the book was published. And sometimes you might find the price in one country, sometimes the price in different countries of the world. Now, move on with our text. How can we, as you see here, you have word plus suffix, you have adjectives. You say, well, what's the rapport between adjectives and reading the back cover of a book? Reading the back cover of a book, how can we understand that we are interested in this novel or this book? Sometimes when we focus on the adjectives or sometimes on the nouns, and because it is a kind of description, as he said that our novel depicts real life, we are going to find so many adjectives, and adjectives are used when you are describing, and therefore when you describe these adjectives give you an idea about the writer, about the novel, about the text, and so on and so forth. Let's have these words here. In this list, we have what we call base words: care, emotion, rely, regret, joy, understand, friend, harm, use or use, protect, economy, interest. So you notice here there are sometimes nouns, sometimes verbs, sometimes adjectives. If I am going to add a list of suffixes that, as you see here, on the, you have these. This is a list of suffixes: li, full, less, ing, able, if, ik, all. The importance of these adjectives sometimes, I mean, we are making new words, you should know sometimes some suffixes can help you understand the adjective and can help you understand the idea that is the writer is talking about. Look at the table we have here. Care, we have careful. This suffix full is of a positive meaning, and care is of a positive meaning. So positive plus positive, it gives us positive. As you know this in mathematics, plus par plus, ça donne plus. Now, but careful, I can add for careful, I'm sorry for this, I can add for careful careless and careless. The suffix is not written there, but care is positive, less is negative. So care positive plus negative, it leads you to negative meaning of the word. Emotion and emotional. We have chosen the adjective all to add to a noun to have an adjective from emotion. Now, reliable. Notice when you look at the word reliable, you say, what's this? Y and then A. Here comes the real word, reliable, that we have to change the Y into I in word formation. Pay attention to your spelling. Regret. Regretful, as we know, regret is something sometimes good, but it has a negative meaning, plus full, showing that a person is regretting or regretted what he or she has or had done. Joy, joyful. Understand, understandable. You notice this suffix able. This suffix means that when you have a verb plus the suffix able, it helps you understand that something that can be done. Understandable. This book is understandable. It means we can understand it. This book is ununderstandable. We add a prefix to the adjective, to the verb, and then we add the suffix to at the end of the verb. We have the opposite, sometimes understandable, misunderstandable in different forms. Friend, a friendly person. Harm, harmful, and then harmless. Now, of course, it's the same thing as care and careful, care and careless. Harm, something is harmful. Harm, it means, harmful means that, for example, we say smoking is harmful, and lots of things are harmful, and we say harm is negative, full is positive, which means negative meaning, harmful. Harm is negative, less is negative, and harm is negative, less is negative, and we say negative plus negative, it leads to positive. This is it, of course. Now, use or use, as you like. Use is the noun, use is the verb, and we say something is useful. Of course, we can also say something is useless. It's not useless, so you don't buy this book, it's useless. If it is, oh no, it's useful, you should buy it. Now, protect, we have a different prefix, which is protective. And this kind of suffix, when you have iv, it shows that the person we are describing, or the noun we are describing, is going to do the action. You know, something is, and we say protective clothes, for example. Protective parents, it means parents who protect. Protective clothes, it means clothes that protect you. And reading novels and books and stories are very protective to you, dear students, because they help you get a very large background knowledge, and which helps you to succeed in the baccalaureate exam, which we hope so. Economy, and notice here we have the suffix ik. So the same thing here we have, what's this? I have Y and I, which is not normal, so we write the word economic. And you notice the change of the stress. We say economy when it is a noun, we say economic when it is an adjective. By the way, words that end in ek or x, their stress is on the last but one syllable, no, with very little few exceptions like politics, Arabic, Catholic on the first syllable. But here we have the majority of words that end in ik or x, the stress is on the last but one. And finally, of the list of the adjectives, the suffix that we have not used, of course, is this. It is interesting. An interesting book, an interesting novel. And you say interested. You see here the adjectives you make an adjective from a verb. Sometimes it is a past participle, sometimes it is an ing, I mean present participle. And when it is a present participle, interesting, it means that the noun we describe does the action, an interesting book, etc. And when you say I am interested, it means that I undergo the action. Now we are going to have a little language exercise. It's gap filling. We're always talking about the back cover of a book. This is very important when you focus on back cover of a book or not. I mean, when you have this kind of question in the tests, you have to read carefully. Of course, you read the word. I'm sorry, I don't have the list of words here, but they will come to you. The back cover copy should be an open to the reader. What's an open? So if you have an adjective here, and I have something to the reader, something, what's it? Then the answer is an open to the reader. I must have a noun, because I have the adjective, and therefore to be an open what? It's an open invitation. And this is the importance of reading the back cover of a book. It is an open invitation. A book sometimes tells you, come to read me, come to buy me. As we say, it's one kind of designing things. It may be sometimes like the commercial advertisement, which try to attract people to read. Let's continue reading. An open invitation to the reader to cross the doorstep of a book. To cross the doorstep. What a nice sentence, you know. And when you cross the doorstep of a book, you find yourself in the book. It means reading the book, so don't hesitate. Go on. It should beckon the reader, comma, and then him. What's this kind of space? What should I put here? Since I have here, it should beckon the reader, and then I have him. You notice the importance of the comma, and therefore I have an ing, tempting him. And temptation is hard to control or is hard to face. Tempting him with the choice tidbits that hold the promise of the banquet within its covers, wafting the essence of what's and making. If I have and making, of course we cannot mix two things that are unmixable. Sometimes we say, by the way, you know, the proverb, mix flour and sugar, oil and water don't mix. So this, you can apply this proverb when you are dealing with language. If I have making, for the sake of what you call kind of parallelism, either I have an ing or what is within, and making the reader do what? And this is, of course, here, what is within what? Within the book. And making the reader hungry. To make someone hungry. And when you are hungry, of course, this is not hunger for food. This is hungry to read. And if you don't read, you might be hungry. But I hope you should not starve. Starve intellectually, I mean. And you know, to starve, it means to die. Because when you read, that is a kind of oxygen that helps your brain to develop and mature. For what's being served up inside the novel, it should be provocative and engaging enough to, notice this too, of course I must have a book, a verb, enough to book a reader's interest, yet not give away so much of the contents. So, by the way, we say contents, the stress on the first one because it's a noun, you know, so that the bite is gone and in just one bite. It means as if here you are putting a hook for a fish, and when the fish is going to eat the bite, it's going to